Welcome back, traders, to Market Analysis 101. Don't forget to hit that like and also subscribe to get notifications every time that we put a new video on this channel. All right, so what do we got here for today? Let me pull this back at the 1 day because I think that the story is always important. So just from the get-go, we got a nice sort of bullish candle. I can't say it's a convincing bullish candle because ultimately what could be happening is that we could be setting up for a lower move at the moment. But nonetheless, what we covered yesterday played out. This is where the futures are important. So let's take a look at the futures, and I have it already set up right here. One of the things that you're going to see if you go to the futures, we see the pullback, right? We see the pullback down here, and finally destiny is fulfilled, right? So we hit that. The market contended with that area. It came down and then it gave you a wick and then it pivoted off of that area. In fact, let's look at this red bar here. The low of that red bar, see, we missed it by $4. The market came down and then it pivot, and what happened? We took the rocket all the way up, right? So what does that tell us? Well, one of the things that it's telling us is that we are moving up for sure. Okay, so let's go back to the 1 day. So we got this green bar. We came to that 2950. We pivoted off of that 2950, and what did we get? We got an upside for Monday. And let's look at this a little bit more closer. Okay, so we come down, right? And so in the futures, what you're going to see is that we come down all the way to the 2950 area, or what we called support. So the market came down, it visited that area. It said, are we moving down lower, or are we going to bounce out of this area? And so ultimately what happened is that the market contended, it fought, right? The bulls and the bears fought this area. And then we bounced up, and what happened in the morning? We had a sort of gap up, gap down. What do I mean by? What I mean is that we definitely gapped down from Friday, but we definitely gapped up, right, because of the futures market in the morning. So we don't have this area right here recorded on the S&P 500, but we do have it for the futures, right? And so we bounce out of that. And so if you did take a trade off of that, right, because you felt confident that we had some strong support out of this area. And again, when we're developing these habits of trading, what we want to develop is confidence of identifying areas of support, identifying areas of reversal, looking at the candles and the story that it's giving us. And so in this case, one of the things that we saw is that we pivot off of that support, and then we took the express train up. And man, oh man, I definitely jumped on that train, and I took profits along the way, and it was a nice Monday on my side. So hopefully you had a very profitable trading session today. And so now we found ourselves, taking a breather in this area. Now, I want to point out something very interesting that I was looking at, and then hopefully this might help you a lot. Again, I'm going to take a look at the MACD just for a second, right? We're going to review the MACD. And so currently at the moment, we seem to be sort of swinging up towards the upside, which is good, because we're observing what's in front of us, right? We are observing the data, and we're observing the facts here. And the facts are that we had an up move today on Monday. We have a nice little swing here happening on the MACD. Now, one of the things that I wanted to point out today regarding the RSI, right? So if we look at the beginning of the trading session, we came down, we dipped down, right? Obviously because we opened lower, and we spiked out of that bottom. We didn't even go all the way to oversold camp. What happened is that we spiked right through just by a little bit, and then we bounced, right? We had a strong bounce from the beginning. Now you could say, it was because of the Fed or, X news article or whatever. I don't really take that into account, only because I'm a chartist. I am an analyst, and I'm looking at the data, and I'm making decisions out of my observations from the facts and the data that I'm getting here, right? So that keeps me pretty objective. and protects me from becoming very biased. Now, you could choose to digest, the news and keep that on. But, I found in my sort of trading experience that turning off the news helps me make better decisions, clear decisions, and trade what's on the chart. Now, you could choose to watch the news. You could choose to keep it on. But you got to be careful not to become biased because of what you hear or what Kramer might say on one of his soapboxes. So you got to be careful with that, right? So, again, looking at the chart right now, we pivot off of the support. We went up. The actual game plan played out. Yesterday's charting played out. And so we're taking a pause right here, right? We had a little pullback after the big spike, obviously, and then we had this small pullback, and now we're sort of starting to make a sort of a new trend higher. All right, so where do we go from here? As we covered in the previous video, we made the case that the bulls are going to try to change the narrative and make this into another bullish run up. And obviously right now, we're trying to make a run for this area right here, right? The idea is to get into this area and fill this gap right here. However, in the process of actually getting to this yellow box and to actually covering this gap, we're going to have some ups and downs along that way. So, this is one of those areas where you want to be careful because we already made a jump up. We're going to get a pullback at some point. Perhaps the pullback might happen around these moving averages, which we have right here. I believe it's the 50 and the 21. But ultimately, we're going to get some resistance on the way up. Again, you have a lot of bears. You have a lot of bears out there. So, they're trying to make the case that, hey, no, this is breaking down. We broke down out of a wedge pattern, right? A rising wedge pattern. So there's a lot of bears that are going to try to make the case that we are now breaking down. We are going down south. In fact, I see numbers down to like 700, 1,700. We don't know that yet, right? I mean, this is where, yes, some fundamentals do come into play, right? The idea that the Fed is involved, the idea that we're overly extended, all that stuff does come to play. We're trying to be careful, right? In creating these habits, we're trying to be careful not to become biased. If you become biased, then that's when you start losing money because then you're trying to make the trade do exactly what you want it to do, which is the opposite of letting the market do exactly what the market is going to do anyway, right? So we want to be careful. We want to make sure that we are protecting our profits and that we're taking, one, that we let our winner win, which is right here. In this case, it's the S&P. The idea here is, one, to protect those gains and to make sure that when we have a train, an express train up, that we're on it and that we get off of it right on time. So right now, again, the expectation would be that the bulls are going to try to make the run all the way up to this gap, try to fill this gap. And if they do, again, we still don't have a bullish case that we're going to move beyond. This is a very tricky area. Once we get into this gap, if and when we do, we are still going to find ourselves in a very tricky spot. So we're going to have to keep our eyes on the data ultimately, right? We're going to have to keep our eyes on what the charts are telling us. So in the first video, we talked about how impulse waves make three-wave structure, right? So in this case right now, we sort of have our first wave up. And so right now we don't have all the information, right? We don't have the full picture. We just have the beginning of the puzzle here. Now, going back to to the futures chart, right, where trading is happening at all moments, one of the things that I want to point out is the setup that we had from the beginning of the morning, right? So I did say that we visited that 2950 area. It was an area of contention. It was an area of support. It was an area where, again, the market was either going to find the support or the bears were going to just blow right through it, right? So we found that. We bounced from that, but we got a beautiful bullish setup. We got a beautiful bullish setup. And what do I mean by that? Well, one of the things that you see at the beginning of the market, specifically on this chart, right? We got this move up, and then we started making a flag, and that is a bullish move, right? So we had an up move, we had some consolidation, people came in, they bought up, and then we had our express train up, right? And then we had a pullback, right? And one of the things that I want you to just notice, again, the picture has not been fully drawn, but one of the things that you could take away is that, number one, we have this first wave right here, right? We go up, we pull down, we go up, we pull down, and then here we are, right, making this additional move. So this is one of those classroom moments, right? On our first video, we talked about how our impulse waves make a three-wave structure. Obviously, it's a five-wave structure, but I like to call them three-wave because I see this as your first wave here as you come up and you pull back, and then you got the second wave, and then you pull back. This is your second wave. And then now we're creating this other additional wave up, and we're already creating sort of this third wave. Now, we don't have the full picture. We don't want to make an error and say that this here was already finished. And I know that it looks all dirty now. We don't want to say that this is our second wave just yet. We want to see what the market is going to develop. We want to see how the structure develops because, again, you have ups, you have downs. And what you want to do is take a step back and look at the whole picture. And so at the moment, it almost seems like, okay, you know, we already created the first two waves. We're about to make this third wave. So one of the things that I want you to keep in mind is that we're getting to a position where we're about to finish off that first wave. And so we are going to see a pullback at some point. So let's go back to the first. All right, let's go back to the 1 day. And again, our target right now at the moment is this sort of 31.25 area. That's the area where the bulls are going to try to make their case, and they're going to say, we are not done. This train stops until we say it stops. All right, so we have that area. Keep that in mind. The other thing that I want you to also keep in mind is what we're forming. We may see a sort of pullback in either tomorrow or in the next day, right? And the reason that I say that is, and I'm going to actually do this on with a white color here, is we're sort of forming, all right, another of those flags that we like to point out. Why is that important? Well, the important thing about these flags is once you are able to identify it, you know, you're able to identify also sort of the general direction where this is going to go. Now, again, the market can break out of that, right? However, at this moment, we're developing a story. We're trying to figure out what the story is going to be. And if we do have this fill out, right, if we do have a lot of side action, then you betcha that we're going to come down and we're going to test this area right here, which we're calling 2798 and 2784. We might get something like what we got here at the 2950, where we might get a little wick at the bottom. And that is fine, but it's very important not to jump the gun just yet. We want to see that breakout. We want to see that confirmation. We want to make sure that the story checks out so that we can feel confident, right, in making our next move. So, you know, keep that in mind as the market sort of continues to develop the story. Again, you know, it doesn't matter what direction the market takes. What matters is that we're on that train once it takes that direction. In the meantime, you know, there might be some opportunities here in this area, in this flag area, to make some money. So keep an eye out for that. Again, if you have any questions, put them in the comment sections. All right, so let's keep an eye on it and let's stay profitable. All right, see you guys.